She looked me in the eye and said she needed a temporary break to travel with her ex for clarity and closure. But my calm silence changed everything. And months later she was standing at my door begging me to take her back, while I was already living a better life she could never be part of again. I am 34, and for a long time I thought I knew what it meant to build a future with someone. I thought love meant stability, planning, and sacrifice. I believed if you worked hard, saved together, and treated each other with respect, you could overcome anything. For years, I believed my fiancée Claire shared that same dream with me. We talked about marriage, about buying a home, about building a family. I was ready to give her everything I had and more. But one evening, with a calm expression on her face, she looked at me and said words that shattered that illusion completely. She sat across from me on our couch, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "I think I need a temporary break. My ex reached out, and I feel like traveling with him will give me clarity and closure. I just need this for myself." Her words cut through me like a knife. I remember sitting there, staring at her, trying to understand if this was some kind of joke or if she really meant it. But she spoke so calmly, so confidently, as if leaving me behind to run back to her ex was a perfectly reasonable choice. She even smiled, as if expecting me to nod along and support this insult she was throwing at our relationship. Inside, I felt anger, hurt, and disbelief all at once. But I did not shout. I did not argue. I did not beg her to stay. Instead, I took a deep breath and nodded slowly. I told her, "If that's what you need, then go." That was all. No drama, no tears, just calm silence. And that silence scared her more than any fight could have. She looked at me, expecting a reaction, but I gave her nothing. She packed a small bag a few days later and walked out, believing she was in control. She thought I would wait for her while she played with the past. She thought I would keep everything steady until she came back. She had no idea that by walking out, she had already lost me forever. When she left, I quietly began rearranging my life. I transferred our shared savings into my private account, because most of that money came from my hard work anyway. I sold furniture that belonged to me, closed down bills that were in my name, and slowly removed her from every part of my financial world. By the time she realized what was happening, she no longer had access to the comforts she once took for granted. Meanwhile, I focused on myself. I went to the gym more often, put extra effort into my career, and even reconnected with friends I had neglected during our relationship. My life, which she thought would fall apart without her, began to grow stronger every single day. The freedom felt strange at first, but soon it felt natural, felt right. Months passed. She traveled with her ex, believing that this temporary break would somehow bring her clarity. But all it brought her was disappointment. She sent me a message after a few months, a weak apology wrapped in confusion. She said things didn't work out the way she imagined. She asked if we could talk, if we could try again. I did not respond. Silence once again was my answer. And then came the day I will never forget. She showed up at my door. Her eyes were red, her voice was shaking, and for the first time, she looked small and helpless. She said she made a mistake. She said she realized I was the only man who truly cared for her. She begged me to give her another chance. She promised she would never walk away again. But as she stood there, crying and pleading, all I felt was a strange calm. I had already moved on. I had already built a life without her. So I looked at her the same way she once looked at me and said, "You chose your temporary break. Now live with it." Then I closed the door. She knocked a few more times, but eventually she left. And in that moment, I knew I had won. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because I had chosen myself when she failed to choose me. Today, I am happier, stronger, and living a life she can never be part of again. And that calm silence, the same one that shocked her the day she announced her temporary break, was what protected me from ever being pulled back into her chaos. I sat there on the couch staring at her, trying to process what she had just said. A temporary break. The words were so polished, so casual, as if she was talking about taking a short vacation or switching jobs for a few weeks. But it wasn't that simple. She was talking about our relationship, our lives, the future we had been building piece by piece. She was talking about putting all of that on pause so she could wander off with her ex and somehow call it a search for clarity. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, but all I felt was a heavy kind of calm, like my heart had gone quiet while my mind took control. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I didn't even ask her why she thought this made any sense. I just nodded slowly, letting her think she still had control, when in reality, that was the moment she lost it. The days that followed were strange. She packed a few bags and tried to pretend it was normal, as if we were just pausing a movie and planning to hit play later. She even hugged me at the door before leaving, whispering, "Don't worry. This is temporary." I remember standing there watching her walk away, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness because this was a woman I had once believed I would marry. Relief because she had just given me permission to step away without guilt, to finally see her for who she was instead of who I wanted her to be. And that's exactly what I did. While she was off traveling with her ex, posting carefully cropped pictures on social media, pretending that everything was about healing and growth, I stayed back and focused on myself. I threw myself into my work, pushing for opportunities one had been holding back on because I always considered her comfort first. I started spending more time with friends who actually valued me. I rebuilt the routine of my life without her in it, and to my surprise, it didn't feel empty. Felt lighter, easier. Every day that passed without her was a reminder that I didn't need someone who thought love could be put on hold like a casual project. Months passed before I heard from her again. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message. It was Claire. Her words were so different now from the confidence she had that night on the couch. She wrote, "I miss you. I realize now what I threw away. Can we talk?" And that was just the beginning. Soon the calls started. Then the apologies. And finally the begging. She showed up at my apartment one rainy night, soaked from the weather and shaking from nerves, saying she wanted to come home, that the break had shown her how much she needed me. But by then, I wasn't the same man she had left behind. I had built a stronger life, a fuller one, and there was no space in it for someone who had walked away just to chase the past. I stood there listening to her, watching tears roll down her face as she begged me for another chance. And in that moment, I felt nothing but clarity of my own. I simply told her, "This was the temporary break you wanted. The difference is, it wasn't temporary for me." Then I closed the door and walked back into my new life, leaving her outside with nothing but regret. Some months passed and life felt different, almost like a fresh chapter had opened for me. I had settled into my routine, my career was growing, and I was meeting new people who respected me for who I was. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful inside. There was no drama, no second-guessing, no feeling like I was always waiting for someone to value me. I had built a stable life, and I guarded it carefully. One evening, out of nowhere, I heard a knock at my door. When I opened it, I saw her standing there. Her eyes looked tired, her hair messy, and she was clearly not the same confident person who once told me she needed a temporary break. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft and nervous. We sat down in my living room, and she started explaining how the trip with her ex was nothing like she had imagined. She said he had treated her poorly, spent her money, and left her feeling empty. Her words tumbled out one after another, almost like she had been rehearsing them. Finally, she looked at me and whispered, "I made a huge mistake. I should never have left you. Please give me another chance." I looked at her quietly. In that moment, I didn't feel anger, I didn't feel hatred, I didn't even feel the desire for revenge. I just felt done. I told her calmly, "You didn't take a temporary break, you took a permanent exit. I didn't push you out, you chose to walk away. And while you were gone, I learned something important. I don't need to be the backup plan for someone who didn't see my worth in the first place." Her eyes filled with tears, and she begged again, saying she could be better, that she could fix everything, that she had changed. But by then, my heart had moved on. I stood up, opened the door and said, "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. But it's not going to be here anymore. She stayed frozen for a second, as if waiting for me to change my mind, but I didn't. Eventually, she walked away, her shoulders slumped, and I knew that chapter of my life was finally over. I closed the door behind me, took a deep breath, and smiled, because in choosing myself, I had found the life she could never belong to again.